Good afternoon, families, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Muchas gracias, familias, por conectar con nosotros esta tarde. Empezaremos nuestra sesión. It is with great pleasure that we welcome you to Local District Central Virtual Town Hall as part of the Black Students Matter Initiative. Es un placer darles la bienvenida al foro comunitario virtual del Distrito Local Central como parte de la iniciativa Los Estudiantes Negros Importan. We have a very special guest today, and you'll be hearing from him, Honorable Board Member Dr. George Mckenna III. Tenemos un invitado muy especial, el honorable miembro del Distrito 1, miembro de la Junta, el Dr. George Mckenna III.
Here's our agenda for the evening. Please take a moment to look it over. Our engaged participant outcomes. So today, to better understand the nuance and details surrounding the experience of Los Angeles School Board member George Mckenna and the factors that inform his work on the Los Angeles Unified School Board now and in the future. And we will also be inspired by the creativity and range of one of our student scholar artists. Here is a video from Isaiah Thomas from Fauché Learning Center. Thank you. I want to thank Azariah Thomas, and she was accompanied by Joshua Burks on drums and Vincent Womack on piano. Now I'm going to pass the mic over to Andre Spicer, one of the directors of instruction for Local District Central. Andre?
Good evening, and thank you, Mrs. Cameron. Good evening to all of our families in Local District Central. We're so happy to have you here with us, the home of the champions. You took time out tonight, and we're very appreciative. I am Andre Spicer. I'm one of your administrators of instruction, along with my colleague and my good friend, Julie Gonzalez. We're bringing you greetings and welcome. Here in Local District Central, we're intentional about the work and about the support that we provide African-American students every month, not just in Black History Month. Our Black Students Matter initiative was developed over 2 years ago in the wake of the George Floyd murder, when so many millions of us mobilized around trying to uncover the inequities that exist throughout our system. Our town hall meetings are one example of how we engage our families, validating and affirming the culture and all of the assets that our Black families bring to the schools in local district central and beyond. Through windows and mirrors, as we say, our Black students can see themselves in the culture within their school, the curriculum, and in the lessons. And through the windows, they can see themselves in the future, becoming even like our Dr. George McKenna III, serving a career in the community. Now it's my great honor to introduce our leader, a champion of equity, one who is also very intentional about the work that we do in local district central to ensure that Black students have academic success and social emotional wellness. Please welcome our superintendent, local district central, Mrs. Frances Baez. Mrs. Baez, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spicer. Greetings. My name is Frances Baez, Superintendent in Local District Central, the home of the champions. And so I'm wearing my blue the day after the Rams won the championship. So welcome to the Black Students Matter. We see you, we hear you town hall. We have been presenting these webinars for about a year and a half, and we continue our commitment to the achievement of Black students in Local District Central and in all of Los Angeles Unified. Today, we will hear from Dr. George Mckenna III, who has served in the role of teacher, school administrator, principal, local district superintendent, and board member in the Los Angeles Unified School District. Dr. McKenna is well known for transforming George Washington Prep High School in the late 1970s from a failing institution into a successful school in which 80% of the students went on to college. Dr. McKenna has repeatedly shown remarkable leadership in improving outcomes for students and in leading policies that help Black students achieve academically. In Local District Central, the journey to authentically and unapologetically meet the needs of our Black students began over a year ago. Black History Month is quickly blending into every month of the year in our local district as we continue to interrupt systemic barriers to the success of our Black students and work towards providing our students a quality education. Local District Central has established the Black Students Matter initiative, We See You, We Hear You, and the acts of urgency that will lead to school-wide practices that promote opportunities for Black students to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. Through these acts, we will grow a history reflected in Black students graduating from LA Unified. I thank our Administrator of Instruction, Andre Spicer, and our task force for making this town hall possible. We thank all of our board members for representing families and schools to support equity and access for our students. Now, one of our board members is a featured guest today, so we will hear more from Dr. McKenna in a moment. And so now I would like to introduce to you Honorable Board Member Monica Garcia from Board District 2, who leads policies to reach 100% graduation and college access through the Great Outcomes Initiative, bridging K-12 to college success. Ms. Garcia, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Superintendent Baez, and hello, champions of Local District Central. I join you today to celebrate and salute my colleague, Dr. George McKenna, for his service over the decades. And I will say out loud that I believe I'm one of those young people who benefited from George McKenna and his allies who stood up so that more of us were seen and heard. I'm glad that we get to learn from Dr. McKenna today. Over his words on the board, I have learned about his deep commitment to lift truth about possibilities and adequacy, and about the need to be uncomfortable with the way things are, especially for our Black students. So thank you, Local District Central, for lifting up Dr. McKenna, and for lifting up the LA that needs all of our children, including our Black children, to succeed with reading and writing and graduation and understanding their self-worth. Thank you, Superintendent Baez and team. I am learning with you today.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. It's a pleasure to have you join us today. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Honorable LAUSD Board Member Jackie Goldberg, representing Board District 5, leading community schools policies and efforts to create joyful schools. Ms. Goldberg, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I too come to honor the experiences and the life of my colleague, Dr. George Mckenna III. He personifies, in my opinion, the struggles for really for all of us to have civil rights and civil liberties, and to have our rights and who we are to be appreciated, not tolerated, but appreciated, which is a big difference. I also want to thank Local District Central for all of your efforts around Black students, not just Black Student Month meeting today, but really throughout the years. I have noticed very much the kinds of curriculum and the kinds of support that you have given Black students, Black teachers, and Black administrators in Local District Central. I also want to say that from my point of view, February is an important month because it should be underlining the achievements and the expressions of forward thinking that came from the Black community in America starting as early as 1619. We have much to thank this community for. After all, without slavery, the wealth of this nation would not have been established. It was established off the backs of human beings, sold and bought by other human beings. But because there was no salary paid, no wages paid to any of those doing all of the work, capital was formed, which created this as a wealthy nation, which all of us have been the beneficiaries of. So we owe much in our history to that community, and to that community today as well. I just want to thank everyone for joining in, and to thank particularly my colleague, Dr. McKenna, for his lifetime of dedication to mathematics, not just the civil rights and civil liberties, but that everyone should be able to learn and understand mathematics. He started as a math teacher, and I know that his experience there changed a lot of lives of a lot of students. So thank you very much, Dr. Baez. Thank you, Andre Spicer, and all of you at Central, Local District Central, who put on these exciting and informative and useful and inspiring town hall meetings.
Thank you very much, Board Member Goldberg. And now I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Spicer. Thank you so much for your leadership, and I look forward to hearing from Dr. McKenna III. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baez. And now I'll introduce Ms. Cameron. Ms. Cameron, if you could take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. George McKenna III. He's a member of the Los Angeles Unified School District Board of Education, representing District 1. He was first elected to the board in a special election on August 12th, 2014, to serve the remainder of an unexpired term caused by the death of former board member Monique Lamont. McKenna ran unopposed and won re-election in the primary elections in 2015 and 2020. His term runs until December 2024. McKenna grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. He began teaching in the Los Angeles Unified School District in 1962. He later became principal of George Washington Preparatory High School in 1979. At the time Dr. McKenna took the position, the school was failing and had problems with gang violence, drug dealing, and gunfights. But under his reforms, the school eventually became an institution with an attendance waiting list and with nearly 80% of its students going on to college. His reforms at George Washington Preparatory High School were copied across the country. A story of Dr. McKenna's turnaround of Washington Prep was made into a movie called The George McKenna Story, which starred Denzel Washington playing the role of George McKenna. He has received over 400 citations and awards in recognition for his work. He earned his bachelor's degree in mathematics from Xavier University, his master's degree in mathematics from Loyola University, and his doctoral degree in education from Xavier University. He received the Congressional Black Caucus Award, Chairman's Award in 1989, and he was elected to the National Alliance of Black School Educators Hall of Fame in 1997. In addition to teaching and working as a school principal, Dr. Mckenna worked as an engineer for North American Aviation on the Apollo Moon Shoot project. He has also served as superintendent of the Inglewood Unified School District, deputy superintendent of the Compton Unified School District, and assistant superintendent of secondary schools for the Pasadena Unified School District. It is my pleasure and my honor to welcome Dr. Mckenna to our Black Students Matter Town Hall. Dr. Mckenna, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Cameron. I deeply appreciate it. And to Dr. Ms. Baez, and to my friend Andrea Spicer, and my other colleagues on the Board of Education, thank you for that welcome. Thank you for those kind words. This is Black History Month. Black History Month is a symbolic opportunity for this entire country called America. And I won't call it the United States of America, because sometimes we're not united. And you find that out when we go to the polls to vote. But the blessed thing about democracy is that we at least get to vote. And that sometimes causes us to vote. At least we don't have a dictatorship. But the history of Black Americans is one that is unlike any other history of any other culture or group of people. The slave trade is the reason that most Black people came to America. They didn't come here voluntarily. And it started in the 1400s when the slave traders, the white slave traders, decided to grab another group of people from another country, not to bring them over temporarily, but to bring them over permanently, no matter if they lived or not, and form what's called the slave trade. And they were called enslaved people. When the people from England came to America, they overtook the Native Americans who lived here and then went down south and took over from the Mexicans and took it by force. And some diplomacy to get the Louisiana Purchase, but it became a building ground for the economy of America, to build on the backs of unpaid labor from slaves who never got free. Now, that diaspora from Africa to America took hundreds of years. And the African slave trade was one of the worst parts of American history. But it needs to be told because the transatlantic journey didn't bring everyone here that was enslaved. And now today, we should know about it, but don't dwell on it, because nobody is enslaved today. But there are people who are still oppressed. And they're oppressed by their circumstances, they're oppressed by their geography, they're oppressed by the politics, and they're oppressed by sometimes their racial and cultural heritage. And when America decides to vote, they often vote in their own self-interest, and they push other people to the side. So we, as the school system, no matter what our heritage is and ethnic background, we must be conscious of the fact that we are educating all the children. I am personally the product of segregated schools and a segregated community and a segregated culture in New Orleans, Louisiana. I never had any white classmates. I was an athlete. I never had any white teammates or even got to play against white. And I was in university and high school in New Orleans, Louisiana. I went to historically Black college. Fighting for freedom and equality became a second nature to us because we knew we were not free. And our teachers helped us with this. When we rode in the back of segregated buses, when we drank out of colored water fountains, and went to segregated schools, we knew we were segregated. And we were fighting for something and against something at the same time. And it became second nature to those of us who want to get involved in the movement. And the movement changes for lots of reasons, from oppression to access to housing, access to employment, access to education. And the Black community in America created, along with some help from white Americans, historically Black colleges and universities. Because even though it was illegal to teach us when we were slaves, it was illegal for us to be educated and to learn to read and write. You could lose your life if you tried to teach a slave to read or write. But we had the audacity and the tenacity and the intentionality, which was a word that was used earlier, talking about the intentionality of local district central and the unapologetic approach to wanting to get an education. And so we did. And my ancestors who were slaves, they got educated as well. And it was very important to us to get an education. It wasn't the only way to try to be free, but it was one way at least to equalize the opportunity. So by looking at the African in America, and now the African American in America, we are the measuring stick for how effectively we are being humane in the treatment of just human beings in general. And as long as Black people remain a place, a culture where others say we're not as bad as they are, that becomes a shame. Now, there are many successful African Americans in this country. One of them became the President of the United States. Did it really change racism in America? It may have, but we can't really tell it, because following that, there was another extreme person put into the White House who advocated openly for racially divisive behavior, and people celebrated him, and he may try to come back. It is not our lamentation here. It is our affectation to take a position about what's going to be good for us as human beings, not necessarily so much as a racial ethnic group. I'm unapologetically African American because I don't have a choice, but I don't run away from the fact that others have an opportunity as well to participate in the emancipation of Black people. Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Black History Month, in the 1920s and 30s, he wrote a treatise on the miseducation of the Negro. And he said that public schools were failing because they were not teaching African Americans to be independent. They were teaching them to be workers and take their place assigned to them by the dominant group, the superior group, if you will, which was considered white people. Now that's a lie. White people are not superior, and Black people are not superior either, other than in certain areas where you can excel and you can test your superiority because you're in a competitive field. But to just assume that by birth you are superior, therefore somebody else is inferior, that's the greatest sin of all. And the Black Americans during the 1800s, following the Civil War and slavery in the 1900s, the movement, that another diaspora took place where when the slaves were freed in the South, they didn't get free right away because they had slave codes and ways to keep them back enslaved on the plantations because they were out of work. And so they arrested them for being vagrants and put them right back there on the plantations. And they did that until around the 1930s. I think Georgia was the last state that chose to divest itself of the vagrancy laws. But in any case, we became interested in moving to the north. So the diaspora moved the Black community from the South to the north and the west. I came to California because I could not take the segregation any longer. Even though the law said we weren't segregated, we were still segregated in the school. It had to be voluntary. And so they couldn't force white people to come to our schools, but we tried to integrate the white schools. And when I came out here, I became a math teacher at Jordan High School in Watts. And during the Watts riots, I was a teacher in 1965 at Jordan High. And I got to see the hostility of the police department against the Black people and what they did, and then the uprising and all of that. Most of the rebellion has been a resistance to oppression. Very rarely have, as the Black community, started the fight, but we do respond to it, and sometimes in violent ways, because we often believe we have no choice, from the riots in Tulsa to the things that happened in Detroit. And you can go around the country where people's lives were destroyed by this racist oppression. Does racism still exist? Sadly, it still does. However, we need to focus on the heroic parts of the Black community, and not so much all of those who died and became martyrs, and the civil rights movements and all those kinds of things, and people were hung from trees, even after slavery, because there was more hanging after slavery and slaughter because they were no longer property. You know, if a slave owner hung his slave, he lost the labor of that slave. It's like hanging his horse because the horse threw him off. He could get a price for the horse. The horse can still be used. But after slavery was ended, a lot of Black men in particular were killed by people lynching them and doing other kinds of things to them. The reconstruction of the United States came after the Civil War. And then the Ku Klux Klan rose up, and the anti-lynching movements had to come up to keep them from trying to kill us just because we existed. Now we need to move forward into where are we today? We're in the 21st century. I didn't think I'd live this long. I'm probably the oldest member, I know I'm the oldest member of the board, but I'm probably the oldest employee in the district right now. I've been here quite some time. I don't enjoy being old, but I do enjoy having been around long enough to know what other people don't know and have seen what other people haven't seen. And many have seen things that I haven't seen. I will concede that. Being of age doesn't mean you're necessarily wiser, but you are more experienced. It doesn't make me right, but it does make me knowledgeable. When I grew up, there was Jim Crow, which were the segregation laws, and segregation continues even in housing today. It continues in employment. It continues in opportunities. And yet we still struggle and say, we must overcome. And that was one of our anthems, we shall overcome. And when we overcome, the rest of the country overcomes as well. The people of color overcome, and even the white community that are not all our oppressors. All of white people are not our oppressors, but it's the systems that sometimes oppress us. So an underperforming school that is in a neighborhood that remains underperforming for years, for decades, that is somewhat unexplainable unless it is intentional. So if it's going to be eradicated, it has to be with intentionality. So resources have to be adequate in order to erase that, not just address that. So the Black community is a barometer for have we really arrived yet? Well, we're here, but have we really arrived in terms of enlightenment? I don't think so yet. We are known in our sports achievements, and we're also known for academic achievements, but not as readily because it's not as a celebrity. I worked as an engineer, as a mathematician for the Apollo Moonshot project in the 60s. I never saw another Black person in North American aviation, which was in Downey at NASA, North American Space Administration. It wasn't until recently I saw the movie about Hidden Figures, and I saw there were Black women on the East Coast who were mathematicians as well. Didn't know they existed. There were only a handful of them, and they too were heroic. But you have to understand the oppression that they worked under because they were not considered to be supervisors or not considered even to be equal. They had to compete just to be considered mediocre. But they were more than mediocre. They were exceptional just to get to that level of competitiveness. And so for our families today, it is extremely important that we all work to make sure that Black children and other children go to school every day, not just because it's raining, you stay home, not because it's colder than it was the day before, you stay home. You never stay home from school, never. But too often, people say, I don't want to go to school. And I believe even today, and this is my personal opinion, with the Zoom and the virtual learning, people have gotten comfortable but not getting up in the morning and staying in their pajamas all day and call themselves going to school. But when you go to school, for a student's perspective, you got to be able to touch the other students, particularly for the younger students. They can't learn about life unless they can sit next to somebody and tell stories and laugh with each other and touch each other, even, wrestle with each other. So they get to learn about how other people enact. And children sitting at home looking at pictures of the teacher, and the teacher looking at pictures of them and calling that a comfortable way to learn. And they are doing that voluntarily, because all we have said to the community, be vaccinated and come to us. And people still decide, no, I don't want to be vaccinated. I'd rather do this. We even have some professionals that say, I don't want to teach. I don't want to come to school and teach. I'd rather stay home and teach from a screen. That's their choice. That's sad, in my opinion, but that doesn't help. We need to be able to feel each other, to talk to each other, to touch each other, to see each other, to laugh with each other, to enjoy the stories that we tell each other in order to grow as human beings. It's inhumane to be separated from each other because of technology, and only text each other, but never write letters of appreciation or even condemnation, if you wish. You can't write a letter to the editor of the LA Times if you don't know how to write. And you have to learn how to do all of that. So there are a lot of heroes in the Black community. Some are already gone, some are around us now. We have heroes in the military. We have heroes in politics. We have heroes in athletics. When I was coming up, I knew about heroes in athletics. I was an athlete. I played 4 sports in high school and 3 in college, but I never got to meet any of them because we had no television, and we had a radio, and we could listen to them. We could listen to Joe Louis fight. We could listen to Jackie Robinson as a Dodger. And I'm a Dodger fan today because of Jackie Robinson, and he integrated the major leagues as a member of the Dodgers. But today, things are different, and different opportunities for different people, and money has a lot of influence on sports. And you saw a game yesterday, if you watched it, the Super Bowl. That was a business enterprise. It was more than an athletic entertainment. It was more than just an athletic experience. It was major business. It was $billion business. That stadium was built with billions of dollars to get money to be spent. And the cost of the tickets was so exorbitant, most people that I know personally could not afford to go to that game. And the sad part about it is when the game is over, people in the street are out there celebrating and doing vandalism, and they can't even afford a ticket to the game, but they say, we won. Well, who is we? And the same thing happens when the Lakers win. When they win, they go berserk and become vandals. And that is not the way to celebrate athletics, because other people have the opinion, well, we need athletics because if we didn't, we'd kill each other in wars. And we're still warlike. We still are in a position in America and in the world where we're willing to kill each other, and people are willing to bomb each other, even in places like called the Holy Land. You say, what's that got to do with African Americans? Because we join the armies, we join the military, we get pulled into it and get to fight people that we don't even know. Muhammad Ali, when he was a heavyweight champion of the world, he said that he would not go to war because no Vietnamese had ever referred to him as the N-word, and he wasn't going to go fight in Vietnam. And they took his title away from him for 3 or 4 years in his most productive time. And he came back, and we considered him heroic. He, like every man, he has his flaws. Martin Luther King is a hero. He had his flaws. Thurgood Marshall is a hero in the law. He has his flaws. Barack Obama, I'm sure, has many flaws. He became president, and this country did everything it could to keep him from being successful. They pushed back everything he tried to do, and are still trying to destroy what he did with healthcare. It's insidious, and the Black community seems to exacerbate the racist instincts of people who prefer to be superior just by reason of their birth, and that is their fault. They believe an untruth. They believe something that's not a fact. You're not born superior. You just are born with opportunity, and chance to be equal through your achievements. Now, I thank you for thinking about African American history during Black History Month, but you need to think about it all the time. So I would say to all of the people who are listening, whether you be a Black American or non-Black African American, every African American that does not succeed is a burden for the rest of us. So for every Black American that doesn't become a doctor because nobody pushed him or we didn't push him, or your colleagues, your students, your friends in school didn't push you, you may stay sicker. You keep another ailment longer because there's one doctor that we didn't make. But you knew him in 9th grade, but you let him fall away. So the students, I say to you, don't let anybody drop out of school. If they're your friends and you say you hang out with them, then hang out with them on the way to college. And if not on the way to college, hang out with them so they get employed and at least they graduate from high school. That's the first rite of passage, to graduate from high school. We have a goal, 100% graduation. We never get there, but that doesn't mean we don't try. And we need to make sure that nobody drops out along the way. Some of our friends drop out for reasons that are out of their control. It's not because they don't want to be in school, but economics gets them, or illness gets them, or the family changes, or it breaks up and they have to go to work and do all kinds of things. So I give our children a lot of credit for being heroic, even when they're struggling. And I applaud my colleagues on the board who are trying to put more mental health services in the community, into the schools, so that the children who are feeling, unequal and uneven, they have somebody to talk to, and they're not at risk, and they can feel comfortable coming to school and want to come to school, but it's not a burden. But primarily, school is for teaching you skills. You have to be able to do what we call the 3 R's: read, write, and arithmetic, which is not an R, it's misspelled. But when you can't do math and you can't do language and you can't read for understanding and you can't write, you're handicapped, no matter how great is your mental health. So I don't want you to feel that that's the most important thing. It is important, but if you come out, you won't be able to come out of school unless you just accidentally come out with low grades, and then you're not competitive in the real world. But the African American family is still here. It's resilient. We didn't go away. We didn't disappear. So to all my friends who are African Americans, and I have lots of them, I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of all the Black educators, many of whom are administrators today. We had one who recently passed away, the first Black female, and that was Dr. Michelle King. And we have people on this Zoom who are administrators in the Council of Black Administrators, and are principals of schools, and are teachers in the classroom. And we need to find more Black teachers in our classroom. The problem is, if we don't get them into college, they won't become teachers. They won't get the degree. They won't be able to get a certificate. You just can't go just grab people off the bus and say, I want to make a teacher out of you. You have to be trained to be a teacher. So I'm going to be saying things to my own colleagues about future teacher clubs on campus, where we find sponsors and pay them a stipend, like we pay coaches stipends and other people's stipends, to do that in addition to the teaching that they're doing, so that we identify young people in the middle and high school and expose them to what teachers do, so that in a few years, we'll have people in the universities enrolling in teacher education. We do need reform in the criminal justice system. I am not an advocate for defunding the police, but I'm certainly an advocate for reforming. But you can't reform that which you remove. And so if you amputate your arm, you can't reform your arm. You need a prosthesis. And so I believe that we need the protection and safety of our staff at schools. We do need people from the community to be a part of our school community. And we do need to use the resources that we have now. We have more resources now than we've had in a long time in terms of for schools. So we have to use them wisely, because they won't be here forever. I already know that. Things will happen and the economy will change, and new administration will take over at the state level and at the local level, mayors and governors and presidents of the United States. So I believe that we have to continue the struggle. And everybody's a part of the struggle for equality. So let's not just say Black people ought to fight for their equality. We couldn't have started HBCUs without non-Black people helping us to do it. And I have a degree, more than one, from HBCU and other universities as well. And I got a very good education. And it was segregated, but it was excellent because my teachers invested in me. And I worked hard too. I studied. I needed to study because I prefer to play basketball than go to class. So my family made sure that I didn't choose basketball and have a dream that I was going to be a professional athlete and be a baseball player, or a basketball player, or play football. That was a dream. That was a childish dream. However, we need to consider schools a sacred place, and our children need to be encouraged to also form clubs on campus to let nobody else drop out. They have friends. They know who the friends are that are not coming to class, and we need to reach out. That is an act of love, to reach out to others who are in need. That's how you really show your humanity, by reaching out to other people who have need. Not just wondering how many people love you, but the real question is, how many people do you love? And I'm saying that to parents and to students. Many of our children don't come from two-parent families, not just Black children, lots of people. And that's a shame. But that's not the child's fault. And so schools become what we call local parentis. We become home away from home. So teachers don't feel badly, or don't avoid if students fall in love with you. That's a good thing. And it's okay for you to fall in love with your students. There's an appropriate love that you provide for students. There's an appropriate love that children can give to you. You know, when you were in school, we all do, which teachers we loved, and we love them to this day. We thank them for what they did to help us. And maybe you can't even find them anymore. Maybe they're long gone. And maybe you never got to say thank you, but you still remember them. And when you talk to your classmates, you remember Miss So-and-so? How she stayed on us? And I thought she was mean, but she was really trying to help me. And they saved your lives. And you can save lives too. I'm talking to the teachers now and the administrators. So, Black history, African American history in a month. It's a short period of time, but let's not say this is the only time you think about African American history, because it's the history of America. It is the history of America. America did all of that. They did it for themselves. They did it to us. They did it. We have to do it for ourselves. We're all part of this fabric right now. And yes, we can take down monuments. And yes, there are stains that are still there. But the struggle continues. And it will always continue. You'll never solve this problem. It will remain a problem because we are still human beings. And we have preferences. And we have biases. What we cannot do is be unequal on how we treat other people. In a simple way, a person in a wheelchair who cannot walk has a disability. How you treat that person creates the handicap. And if we give them access to be able to enter places where they couldn't have, if they didn't have a ramp or an elevator, they can then compete. They can go to the 24th floor and not be able to walk there because we provide access. And so trying to help people overcome the obstacles is very important for all of us, because you don't want a great neurosurgeon who can help with brain disease to never get to medical school in the first place, because he or she didn't have the opportunity, because we let them slip by the wayside. And when you give people opportunity, in the arts in particular, where maybe the greatest violinist in the world could have been, but nobody ever put a violin in her hand. And she wound up doing things much less significant than being the greatest violinist in the world. We have to look at each other as an extension of ourselves. The one thing we all are is human beings. We're not animals. We're not animals. And we have to see ourselves as being able to project love, and receive it, yes, but give it, more importantly. And so for all of you who are part of the African American history activities during February, the month of February. Stay with us. Stay with us. We're not going to give up this fight. We have no choice. We know that we still have to struggle to make it equal in America for everyone. And that makes us closer to each other because we're in the trenches together. We will bond together. I thank you for tolerating me for this short period of time. I could talk longer, but I don't know what else I can say to you that would really be more meaningful than when you wake up tomorrow morning, remember, it's still Black History Month. And when you wake up in December, it's still Black History. It might not be the month, but Black history is still here. And Black current and heart, not history, but Black contemporary life is still here. We're not going anywhere. And we all should be grateful for that. And for all the other people of color or not of color, we all must bond together because only together and only through unity can we survive and thrive. Thank you very much, Ms. Baez, and thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.
Dr. McKenna, we do have a few questions from the audience, if you wouldn't mind answering them.
Go right ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the first question is, do you feel we are making progress as it relates to Black students? And if so, how do you feel we're making that progress?
Well, we are making progress. We're not going backwards. But if you say, are we where we want to be? No. No, I'm gratified, but I'm never satisfied. We are making progress with Black students. We have more Black students enrolling in upper division courses. We have more Black students trying to go to college than we've had in the past. We have more Black students willing to take on the challenges of academia and also participate in the arts in the schools. The enrollment has gone down because people are leaving California. It's unaffordable. The Black student is not even 10% of the district. There was a time when we were around 14, 15%, not any longer. But, you know, that's because of the economics of California. But I applaud the teachers' efforts, and we'll continue to grow if we can make the students, not make the students, help the students to participate in their own emancipation. And a lot of that has to do with the kind of support system we can give to the parents to not let their students not come to school 2 days out of a week. There should be no day when you don't come to school because we have something to offer. And to my colleagues who are teachers, push the students. Andrea Spicer and some other people have started the African-American parents. They meet in different parts of the district from time to time, and they get to know each other. Because if you don't have that African-American assembly district-wide of parents, they don't know they exist. And they get to know each other and they form bonds that can help them to share with each other. I do believe we're making progress. Are we where we want to be? If we were, we could quit. So please don't quit because we're not where we want to be, but we're a lot further than we were. So yes, I do think we're making progress.
Okay, so another question is, what are you most proud of over your multi-decade career?
Oh, what am I most proud of? Well, I'm proud that I'm still alive, number one, because there were times in my life when I came close to losing my life because I lived a different kind of life. I won't go into all of that. But I think I'm most proud of the fact that students tell me I made a difference in their lives. And not just when I was in the classroom, when I was an administrator, when I was a superintendent in another district, in other different districts. I have made many relationships over my life from young people who are now full-grown people. Quite frankly, when I ran for office, I did not want to be a board member. I didn't want to be a politician. And then I'm still not a politician, but I had to get involved in the politics to win a seat. And the only reason I won the seat because I have name recognition. And all these children that I knew, they were in middle school and high school because I was a secondary person, they became voters when they grew up. And even if they didn't know who to vote for, they saw my name on the ballot, so they voted for me. And I've been unopposed. I'm not necessarily proud of that, but I'm proud that I made a difference in their lives. It feels good to be remembered in a positive way. I don't think I have any enemies along the way who are my students. I disappointed some of them sometimes because they disappointed me. So I didn't give them what they wanted. I had to make them work for it. And when they work for it, they understand they had to earn it. And then they thank me later. I lost some of them along the way because of the violence in the communities. But I'm proud of the fact that when I was at Washington, it was a school when I opened that school, not opened it, when I went there and began my my administration, there was a waiting list to get out of the school. They were getting on the buses, and they had more kids on the bus than they were enrolled in the school. 10 years later, the school had a waiting list to get in, and it picked up almost 1,500 students that had never been at the school and were on a waiting list because they'd been on. And I took them from other schools. And people, I got into discouraging remarks from people at the district level that said, "Well, you're taking the kids off the bus." I said, "That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm not encouraging them to get on the bus." And that was a district policy at the time: encourage them, give them the brochures, get on the bus. And I wasn't popular, but I knew the right thing to do was they can go to school right in their own neighborhood. They don't have to chase anybody else to get a great education. That's what we tried to prove. To replicate that is difficult. So as much as I've talked about what to do, very few people try to do it. It's a full-time job, a 24/7, 365. So what am I most proud of? That I've been an educator all this time. I chose the right profession. You can make a difference. You can change the world. And you can see the product in your children when they grow up and do things that, for example, just at Washington, over the short period of time, out of a few classes in just a short window, 3 principals became principals in the district, several of them, and 2 of them are directors now, and another one is still a principal of a high school, and others are principals of elementary school, and they all came out of Washington High. And so that meant they got serious about the education. And I was preaching the gospel according to George Mckenna. I made it up as I went along, but it seemed to have worked on them. They stayed in school. They went to universities. They came back and invested in the community. And some went to other states and around the world. But I remember as many as I can, and they write to me from time to time. So that's what I'm proud of. I did not make a mistake when I became a school teacher. I could have made more money doing something else, but I made enough as a school teacher. And today I consider myself a rich man.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. McKenna. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Can we have the PowerPoint up again, please? I really want to also let everybody know, the next slide, please, that here at Local District Central, we have been celebrating Black History Month. We celebrate all year long, but we just had some special events this year. So we're going tomorrow to the HBCU Caravan Tour at Charles Drew University. We're taking over 400 students to the Black College Expo on the 19th, which is this Saturday. We've sent out different choice board information for teachers and families to utilize. We have lessons on our Discovery Ed. And we have been doing a social media post every day, and on our local district website, we have been highlighting Black people who've made contributions to our world. So these are the few things that we've been doing this month. And then next, I really would like to thank Dr. McKenna for such an informative and inspirational presentation. Dr. McKenna, we are so fortunate to have you. And these town halls, in addition to our virtual and in-person events in Local District Central, hosts provide a remarkable opportunity to connect many different schools and communities throughout the local district and Los Angeles so that we can learn together. A huge thank you to our local district superintendent Baez and administrator of instruction Andre Spicer for their vision and direction, which provides increased equity for all of our local district. We look forward to continued programming next month for Women's History Month and more throughout the rest of the year. And like our Los Angeles Super Bowl champion Rams, we just are getting started. So please follow us on social media. I'd like to turn it back over to our Superintendent Baez for her final words and a goodbye.
Thank you very much, Ms. Helene Cameron. Thank you, Dr. McKenna. Thank you so much for taking us through the timeline. You really were able to tap into the years of slavery, to segregation, to the need for us to provide access and opportunity for our students, and your story as a leader. You have always been an inspirational leader as the principal who transformed Washington Prep High School. And, you've said that, you've told people how to do it. I sort of want to capture it in a book so that we can all replicate that and have it published somewhere and repeat it over and over so that we can transform our schools as well, the way that you transformed Washington Prep High School. Thank you for being with us today. And thank you all.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. Any final words from you, Mr. Spicer, before we log off?
Just gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Dr. McKenna, we love you. It's Valentine's Day. We appreciate you taking time out today. And like Superintendent Baez said, giving us the history from your perspective. And as leaders of schools, talking about the transformation at Washington Prep, so many of my colleagues sat at your footstool and they're still grateful to this day. And I know that our students are better for it today. So I just want to tell all of our family and friends at Local District Central, we love you. We love you every day, not just because it's Valentine's Day, and we celebrate you. We validate you. We affirm you, and we're here to serve. Mrs. Baez, I think we had a great town hall, and we'll see you soon.
I agree. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Happy Valentine's Day.